Researchers studying the predictors of divorce have documented a consistent and uncomfortable pattern. When couples who are asked why their marriage ended, sexual incompatibility almost never appears in the answer. People say they grew apart. They cite communication failures, financial stress, emotional distance, irreconcilable differences. But when the same researchers look beneath those stated reasons, at the longitudinal data, at the patterns that preceded the breakdown, sexual incompatibility appears quietly and consistently as a significant underlying factor in a disproportionate number of failed relationships. The stated reason and the actual reason are frequently not the same thing. And the gap between them is not dishonesty. It is the predictable consequence of a culture that has produced almost no framework for couples to honestly discuss, understand, or navigate their sexual compatibility. Today, we're going to build that framework. In this video, we're exploring sexual compatibility through 4 lenses. What the research actually shows about what sexual compatibility consists of, which is considerably more complex than most people assume, and what happens when specific dimensions of it are misaligned. What psychology reveals about the origins and nature of sexual blocks, where they come from, why they are so invisible to the people who carry them, and what distinguishes blocks that respond to growth from those that are more deeply structural. The what if. What if the discomfort around discussing sexual compatibility openly is producing the very outcomes it was meant to protect against? And the spiritual dimension. What genuine sexual alignment between 2 people actually creates? What misalignment reveals? And what the traditions understood about sexual energy as one of the most honest forms of communication between 2 human beings. This is not a video about technique. It is a video about understanding. The kind that most couples never develop, and whose absence quietly shapes the arc of their relationship in ways they may not recognize until the damage is already significant. The most commonly discussed dimension of sexual compatibility is desire frequency, how often each partner wants sexual intimacy. And the most common finding in relationship research on this dimension is that desire discrepancy. A significant difference in desired frequency between partners is the single most frequently reported sexual complaint in long-term relationships. Studies suggest that meaningful desire discrepancy exists in somewhere between 30 and 50% of long-term couples at any given time. Research by Emily Nagoski at Smith College has documented that the spontaneous versus responsive distinction is one of the most significant and least understood sources of apparent desire discrepancy in long-term relationships. A partner whose desire is primarily responsive may appear to have low desire, but in fact has a desire pattern that requires different conditions than their spontaneous desire partner naturally provides. Beyond frequency, the dimension of desire type is where sexual compatibility becomes genuinely complex. Desire type refers to what each person is actually seeking from sexual intimacy, what need it primarily serves, what experience they are hoping it will provide. For some people, sexual intimacy is primarily a vehicle for emotional connection. For others, it is primarily physical. For some, it is primarily a form of play and novelty. For others, it is primarily a form of reassurance, evidence of being desired, of being chosen, by being seen as attractive by the person they love. The problem is not that people have different desire types. The problem is that desire type is almost never discussed openly between partners. Each person assumes, consciously or not, that their partner is seeking the same thing they are. And when the intimate encounter fails to deliver, what one or both partners are seeking, without either partner understanding why, the failure accumulates silently into disconnection. Research consistently finds that initiation patterns in long-term relationships become entrenched quickly and are extraordinarily resistant to change once established. The partner who initiates more frequently, when declined repeatedly, develops what researchers call initiation fatigue, a progressive reduction in willingness to risk the vulnerability of initiation. What the research reveals is that the experience of repeated rejection in the intimate domain is one of the most psychologically damaging experiences available within a committed relationship. Not because the declining partner intends harm, but because the initiating partner cannot easily separate the rejection of the request from the rejection of the self. Over time, the partner who initiates more stops initiating, and the silence that follows is frequently mistaken by both partners for resolution, when in fact it is surrender. Attachment style shapes sexual behavior and experience in ways that most people are entirely unaware of. Securely attached individuals tend to experience sexual intimacy as a natural extension of emotional closeness, to communicate their needs and boundaries relatively clearly, and to tolerate the vulnerability that genuine sexual presence requires without significant defensive activation. Anxiously attached individuals often use sexual intimacy as a form of reassurance seeking, which can produce a quality of urgency or need in their approach that partners experience as pressure rather than invitation. The anxiously attached partner is not primarily seeking pleasure. They are primarily seeking evidence that they are loved, desired, and safe in the relationship. Sexual intimacy becomes a test that is being administered rather than an experience being shared. Avoidantly attached individuals often experience genuine sexual intimacy as threatening rather than nourishing. The vulnerability and boundary disillusion that genuine intimate connection involves activates their deep conditioning towards self-protection. They may be capable of physical engagement while simultaneously and unconsciously maintaining an emotional distance that prevents genuine union, a phenomenon sometimes described as being present in body but absent in self. The most challenging dynamic in relationship research is what Gottman calls the pursuer-withdrawer pattern, in which the anxiously attached partner's bid for closeness activate the avoidant partner's withdrawal response, which in turn activates more anxious pursuit, which produces more withdrawal. The pattern becomes self-reinforcing and, without intervention, tends to intensify over time until the relationship is held together primarily by habit or obligation rather than genuine connection. A sexual block is not simply a lack of interest or a performance for less intimacy. It is an active inhibition, a point at which the system that would naturally move toward connection encounters an internal barrier and either stops, diverts, or produces a response that is misaligned with the person's actual desires and needs. The most common category of sexual block is shame-based, rooted in messages received during childhood and adolescence about the body, about sexuality, and about what kinds of desire, expression, or needs are acceptable versus unacceptable. These messages came from many sources: religious teachings that sexualized the body as a site of sin and temptation, cultural messaging that defined acceptable sexuality narrowly and punished deviation from that definition with shame and social exclusion, family systems in which sexuality was never named, never discussed, never acknowledged as a legitimate dimension of human experience, producing in children the deep conviction that this part of themselves was either dangerous or unworthy of acknowledgement. Shame-based blocks are particularly insidious because they are self-concealing. The shame that creates the block also makes examining the block feel shameful. The person may know that something is constrained in their intimate life without being able to identify what it is or where it came from. And when a loving partner attempts to address the block, however gently, they may encounter not just resistance but a defensive response that feels to the blocked partner like self-protection against something genuinely threatening. The path through a shame-based block is almost always the same. Gradual, supported exposure to the shameful material in the presence of someone who responds with acceptance rather than judgment. This is why therapy is often necessary, because the shame that makes the material difficult to examine in private makes it even more difficult to examine in the presence of a partner whose opinion to us matters most. Trauma-based sexual blocks operate through the body's threat response system. When a stimulus in the present activates the nervous system's association with past threat, the body responds with the same protective responses it deployed in the original threatening situation: freeze, flight, disassociation, shutdown. What makes trauma-based sexual blocks particularly complex is that the triggering stimulus is often not obviously related to the original trauma. A specific touch, a particular position, a quality of lighting or sound or smell, a moment of particular vulnerability. Any of these can activate the nervous system's threat response without either partner understanding why. The person experiencing the block may not be able to articulate what happened. They may not even be consciously aware that a trauma response has been triggered. The body simply closes. Trauma-based blocks require professional support to address in a meaningful way. They do not respond to patience alone, to increased communication, or the well-intentioned efforts of a loving partner to provide enough safety that the blocks dissolve. For the avoidantly attached person, the primary sexual block is the wall between physical intimacy and emotional presence. They may be capable of physical engagement while simultaneously and unconsciously maintaining an emotional distance that prevents genuine union. The wall is not visible. It is not chosen. It is the automatic activation of a system designed to protect against the very vulnerability that genuine intimacy requires. Not all sexual blocks are rooted in individual history. Some are generated by the specific dynamic of a particular relationship, by accumulated resentment, by unresolved conflict, by breaches of trust that were never fully repaired, by patterns of interaction that have slowly eroded the safety that genuine intimate vulnerability requires. Research by John Gottman has documented the relationship between what happens outside the intimate life of a couple and what happens within it, with remarkable precision. The person who has been consistently criticized, contempted, or stonewalled by their partner carries all of that history into the intimate encounter. Their body knows what the mind may not explicitly acknowledge: that genuine vulnerability with this person is not currently safe. And the body responds accordingly, with closure, with absence, with the same protective strategies it deploys in any situation where opening feels dangerous. The primary driver of sexual incompatibility's damage in long-term relationships is not the incompatibility itself. It is the silence around it. Consider what happens in the average long-term relationship when sexual incompatibility begins to emerge. The partner with higher desire initiates and is declined. They try again. They are declined again. They begin to feel rejected, not just physically, but personally, as though the declining partner's lack of desire reflects something about their desirability, their worth, their lovability. They stop initiating to protect themselves from further rejection. The partner with lower desire notices this silence but misreads it as resolution. Both partners begin to move around the subject, avoiding any conversation that might bring them back to territory that feels dangerous. Months pass, sometimes years. The subject becomes more difficult to raise precisely because it has not been raised. Because raising it now would require acknowledging how long it has been avoided, which produces its own layer of shame and defensiveness. Research on couples who navigate sexual incompatibility successfully consistently finds one distinguishing factor. They talk about it, honestly, specifically, and without the shame and defensiveness that most couples bring to this territory when they approach it at all. What if the conversation most couples never have is also the conversation that would most transform their relationship if they had it? And what if the reason they never have it is not that they don't love each other enough, but that no one ever taught them how? Across the traditions that understood sexuality as a spiritual domain, Tantric Hinduism and Buddhism, Kabbalistic Judaism, Taoist philosophy, alchemical Christianity, the sexual energy is understood as one of the most honest and revealing forms of communication between two human beings. More honest than words, which can be chosen and managed. More honest than behavior, which can be performed. The sexual dimension of a relationship reveals, with extraordinary precision, the actual state of two people's inner lives, their fears, their wounds, their capacity for genuine vulnerability, their relationship to their own bodies and desires. In the Kabbalistic mystical tradition within Judaism, the sexual union between husband and wife, when approached with genuine presence, intention, and love, is understood as participating in and reflecting the cosmic union between the Shekinah, the divine feminine presence, and the Holy One. Human sexual love, at its most conscious and intentional, is understood as a microcosm of the divine creative act itself. The Kabbalistic understanding of sexual compatibility therefore goes far beyond physical or emotional considerations. The question is not just whether two people are attracted to each other or enjoy each other's company. The question is whether their union is capable of producing the quality of presence, intention, and love that allows the act to become genuinely sacred, a participation in something larger than the personal self. In Taoist philosophy, sexual energy is understood as a form of Jing, the most fundamental life force, the energy that underlies all vitality, creativity, and spiritual development. The cultivation and harmonious exchange of Jing between compatible partners is understood as one of the primary paths of physical health and spiritual development available to human beings. Sexual compatibility, in the Taoist understanding, is therefore not primarily about matching desire frequencies or negotiating performances. It is about the quality of energetic exchange between two people, whether their specific combination of energies produce harmony, vitality, and mutual cultivation, or whether it produces depletion, disharmony, and stagnation. The spiritual traditions understood sexual blocks not as problems to be eliminated, but as teachers, pointing with sometimes uncomfortable precision toward the places in a person's inner life where fear has taken the place of trust, where shame has taken the place of acceptance, where the conditioned self has built walls against the very experiences that would most contribute to its liberation. In the Tantric framework, the sexual blocks that appear between partners are not merely personal problems to be worked through. They are invitations to a deeper level of honesty, a deeper level of presence, a deeper willingness to be genuinely seen by the person closest to us. The block in this understanding marks exactly the place where the most significant growth is available. One of the most important contributions the spiritual framework makes to the question of sexual compatibility is its understanding of compatibility as dynamic rather than fixed, as something that develops and deepens through genuine engagement rather than something that either exists or doesn't at the beginning of a relationship. The alchemical tradition's understanding of the conjunctio, the sacred marriage, was not a description of two already complete people finding each other and fitting together perfectly. It was a description of a process, the gradual, sometimes painful, often transformative work of two people becoming more fully themselves through genuine encounter with each other. The friction between them was not a sign of incompatibility. It was the friction of transformation. The resistance was the work. The traditions that understood sexual energy as sacred also understood that conversation about it, the honest, vulnerable, shame-free discussion of what each person needs, what each person carries, what each person is asking the relationship to help them become, is itself a form of spiritual practice. To sit with another person and speak honestly about the places in your intimate life where you are blocked, where you are afraid, where you need something you have never been able to ask for, and to receive the equivalent honesty and genuine care rather than judgment, is to practice the very capacities that genuine intimate union requires. The conversation is not preparation for the practice. The conversation is the practice. So why is sexual compatibility the conversation most couples never have? Because the culture that surrounds it has provided almost no framework for it. Because the shame that accumulates around sexuality from childhood onward makes the conversation feel dangerous before it has begun. Because the patterns of incompatibility, once established, generate their own protective silence. And because the longer the silence continues, the more impossible the conversation seems, until the subject feels like something that cannot be touched without breaking everything. But the research is consistent. The traditions are consistent. The couples who find their way through incompatibility are not the ones with the least incompatibility. They are the ones who develop the capacity to talk about it, honestly, specifically, and with enough care for each other to stay in the conversation when it gets difficult. The conversation most couples never have is also, frequently, the conversation that would most change what was possible between them. And the reason they never have it is not that they don't love each other enough. It is that no one ever taught them how. Is there a conversation in your relationship, or a past relationship, that you knew needed to happen and kept finding reasons not to have? And did the silence around it cost you something? I want to know. The comments on this one are going to go somewhere important. This video is part of a series on this channel exploring human sexuality and intimate connection at a depth that most content never reaches. The earlier videos on why sexuality became taboo and on what sex actually does to the human being provide the foundation that makes this one land more fully. Both are linked below. And 8 other videos on this channel go just as deep. And the next video leaves the sexuality series behind and goes somewhere completely different, but equally surprising. The diamond engagement ring, the one thing that almost everyone assumes is an ancient symbol of love, was invented in 1947 by an advertising agency. But the ring itself is 3,000 years old. And what it actually means goes far deeper than any marketing campaign. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And thank you for watching.